I can't be with someone who has nothing." Those were the last words he heard before the woman he'd given everything for walked out of his life forever. But here's what she didn't know. That nothing she accused him of having? It was worth $847 million. And 6 months earlier, when she was lying in a hospital bed, dying, he'd sold the one thing that meant more to him than anything else in the world to save her life. This is the story of the biggest mistake she'll ever make, and the most expensive love he'll ever pay for. Let me take you back to where it all began. Hello, beautiful people. Welcome back to another story time. I hope you're somewhere cozy right now because we've got quite the journey ahead. Where are you watching from today? Drop your location in the comments. And if you haven't subscribed yet, what are you waiting for? This channel is all about stories that touch your heart and maybe teach us something about ourselves along the way. Hit that subscribe button. I'll wait for you. Done. Perfect. Now let's dive into today's story. 6 months earlier. Forrest Deckard couldn't take his eyes off her. Elsa Dent was laughing, her head thrown back, blonde hair catching the late afternoon sun as they sat at the small cafe on the corner of Main Street. They'd been dating for 3 months, and he still couldn't believe his luck. "You're staring again," she said, catching him in the act. "Can't help it," he replied, reaching across the table to take her hand. "You're beautiful when you laugh." Elsa worked as a marketing executive at a growing tech firm. Ambitious and driven, she'd work her way up from intern to department head in just 4 years. Her colleagues described her as tenacious, brilliant, and occasionally intimidating. But with Forrest, she was soft, playful, and utterly herself. "How was work today?" she asked, stirring her latte with practiced precision. "Same old," Forrest shrugged. "Made some calls, closed a few deals." "You're so mysterious about your job," she teased, nudging his foot under the table. "All I know is you work in sales, but you never say what you sell." Forrest changed the subject, as he always did when his career came up. It wasn't that he was ashamed, quite the opposite. But past experience had taught him painful lessons about revealing too much, too soon. They left the cafe hand in hand, walking to where his car was parked, a perfectly maintained 1967 Corvette Stingray in Nassau blue. It wasn't flashy or new, but it was his pride and joy. "I love this old thing," Elsa said, running her hand along its curved fender. "Though I don't understand why you drive this when you could afford something newer." "Some things have value beyond their price tag," he replied, opening her door. His phone buzzed. The screen showed Tony, West Side location. Forrest declined the call. "Work?" she asked. "Nothing that can't wait until tomorrow." Their evenings together were simple but perfect. Sometimes they'd cook together in her small apartment, dancing to old records. Other nights, they'd walk through the park and get ice cream, talking about everything and nothing until stars appeared. Weekends meant hiking trails outside the city or discovering hidden bookstores and art galleries. Elsa never seemed to mind that their dates weren't extravagant. What they lacked in expense, they made up for in thoughtfulness. Forrest always remembered her favorite flowers, peonies, how she liked her coffee, oat milk, one sugar, and which authors she collected, vintage Jane Austen editions. One evening, as they sat on her balcony sharing a bottle of wine, she rested her head on his shoulder. "I think I'm falling in love with you," she whispered, the admission clearly costing her some vulnerability. Forrest tilted her chin up, looking into her eyes. "I think I fell for you the moment we met." It was during their 6th month together when everything changed. They were grocery shopping, debating the merits of chunky versus smooth peanut butter, when Elsa suddenly gripped the shopping cart, her face pale. "Hey, are you okay?" Forrest asked, alarm rising as she swayed on her feet. "I don't feel," was all she managed before collapsing. The fluorescent lights of the hospital waiting room buzzed overhead as Forrest paced, his heart hammering against his ribs. 3 hours had passed since they'd rushed Elsa into emergency care. When the doctor finally approached, his expression was grave. "Mr. Deckard, we've stabilized Ms. Dent, but I'm afraid we've found something concerning in her scans." The doctor's words blurred together as he explained. Rare condition, growing pressure on her brainstem, experimental procedure, significant risks without intervention. "What are her options?" Forrest asked, his mouth dry. "There's a surgical procedure that could help, but..." The doctor hesitated. "It's classified as experimental. Her insurance won't cover it." "How much?" "The procedure, specialized equipment, and post-operative care. Approximately $85,000. Forrest felt the floor tilt beneath him. Not because of the amount, but because he knew what he had to do. "When can we schedule it?" he asked, his decision already made. "Forrest, no," Elsa protested later from her hospital bed, eyes wide with horror when he told her he would cover the costs. "That's insane. We've only been together 6 months. I can't let you do this." He took her hand, squeezing it gently. "You're not asking. I'm giving." She started to cry then, overwhelmed by his generosity and the fear of her diagnosis. "How can you even afford this? I'll pay you back somehow, I promise." He just kissed her forehead and whispered, "All that matters is getting you well again." What would you do if someone you loved needed everything you had? Would you give it without hesitation? Let me know in the comments below, and if you're enjoying this story so far, please hit that subscribe button. Trust me, we are just getting started. That night, alone in the hospital parking lot, Forrest sat in his Corvette, hands gripping the steering wheel. The weight of his decision pressed down on him like a physical force. He had the money. That wasn't the issue. The issue was explaining where it came from without revealing everything he'd been hiding. The truth was complex. His father had started with one struggling dealership 30 years ago and built an empire of luxury car dealerships across 3 states. Forrest had grown up learning the business from the ground up, and now, at 29, he ran the flagship location and oversaw operations for all 7 dealerships in their group. But he never told women he dated about his wealth. Not anymore. 3 years ago, his ex-fiancée had devastated him. After finding out about his family's business, her entire demeanor had changed. Suddenly, it was all about appearances, status, impressing her friends. When he overheard her telling her sister she was set for life and that his personality was a workable issue, something broke inside him. His father's words echoed in his mind from years earlier. "Find someone who loves you, not your bank account. Money can buy a lot of things, son, but true love isn't one of them." So when he met Elsa, he decided to keep things simple. He drove his beloved Corvette, the first car he'd ever restored with his father, wore nice but not designer clothes, and let her believe he was just a moderately successful sales guy. He wanted to be sure, absolutely sure, that she loved him for him. Now, everything had changed. He needed $85,000 immediately, and there was only one way to get it without revealing his secret. The next morning, Forrest drove to his main dealership before opening hours. The lot was quiet, rows of gleaming luxury vehicles catching the early light. He used his key to enter through the back, not wanting any early arriving employees to spot him. He walked slowly through the showroom floor, past Bentleys and Maseratis, to the separate building housing their vintage collection. His steps echoed in the empty space as he approached the Nassau blue Corvette Stingray, identical to the one he drove, except this one was part of the dealership's inventory. Forrest ran his hand along the car's smooth surface, memories washing over him. His father teaching him to change the oil. His 16th birthday when he received his own Stingray. The countless hours they'd spent restoring it together. His phone buzzed. Tony again. "Boss, you sure about this?" Tony asked when Forrest answered. "Just tell them it's a private sale. Don't mention my name." Forrest's voice was tight. "We've got a buyer lined up who'll pay $850,000. That's almost $100,000 over market. But it's your dad's gift to you." "I know. What about using another car from inventory? Or—"
"No," Forrest interrupted.
"I can't explain company money going missing. This is personal." The truth was, he could have easily used company funds. He had the authority. But that would mean paperwork, questions from the board, potentially his parents finding out. And most importantly, it would mean telling Elsa everything. He wasn't ready for that. "I'll come by after hours to sign the papers," Forrest said, ending the call. That evening, after visiting Elsa in the hospital, he returned to the dealership. The sale documents waited on his desk, the office dark except for one small lamp. His hand shook as he signed, officially transferring ownership of his beloved car to a collector in Switzerland. "The wire transfer will clear by morning," Tony said, standing in the doorway. "Your father would understand, you know." Forrest just nodded, unable to speak past the lump in his throat. He watched through the window as his car, his history, his connection to his father, was carefully loaded onto a transport truck. It's just a car, he told himself, but they both knew it was much more. The next day, Forrest handed a cashier's check to the hospital administrator. Surgery was scheduled for the following week. When Elsa asked how he had managed it, he simply said he'd pulled together some savings and made arrangements. For the next 2 weeks, Forrest juggled his time between the hospital and work. To Elsa, it seemed he was working double shifts selling whatever nameless products he sold. In reality, he was managing a crisis at one of their locations, negotiating a new manufacturer partnership, and handling a major investor meeting, all while trying to be present for Elsa. The surgery lasted 12 hours. Forrest sat in the waiting room, declining calls from business associates, staring at the same page of a magazine for hours. When the surgeon finally emerged, his exhausted smile told Forrest everything before he spoke a word. "We got it all. There's every reason to believe she'll make a full recovery." The recovery period was brutal but hopeful. Elsa fought through pain, frustration, and the indignity of needing help with basic tasks. Forrest was there every step, bringing her favorite books, massaging her shoulders when headaches came, and making her laugh even on the darkest days. One evening, as he helped her walk the hospital corridors, her steps growing stronger each day, she stopped and turned to him. "I'll pay you back," she said suddenly, her eyes serious. "Every penny, I promise." Forrest tucked a strand of hair behind her ear. "You already have." He meant it. Seeing her alive, recovering, smiling again, it was worth everything. But as Elsa improved physically, subtle changes appeared in their relationship. One afternoon, her friend Vanessa visited while Forrest stepped out to take an urgent call. "He's so sweet," Vanessa said, arranging flowers she'd brought. "A real catch." "He saved my life," Elsa replied simply. Vanessa hesitated. "Absolutely. But don't you wonder about his ambition? Girl, you're climbing the corporate ladder. Does he have the same drive?" "What does that matter?" Elsa frowned. "It doesn't. Not now. I'm just saying, you're a planner. You have 5 and 10-year goals. Where does he see himself in 5 years? Have you asked?" The seed was planted. After Elsa was discharged, Forrest drove her home in a modest rental car. If she wondered about his missing Corvette, she didn't ask. She assumed he'd sold it for her surgery, which was partially true, but she had no idea of its actual worth. "Why are you driving this?" she finally asked one day. "Just being practical," he replied, avoiding details. As Elsa regained her strength, she returned to work part-time. Her colleagues welcomed her with celebration, promotion talks already beginning despite her absence. Meanwhile, Forrest seemed perpetually busy with mysterious work commitments that he remained vague about. The company had hit a rough patch during his distraction, and he was working overtime to stabilize things without installing a new management team. But to Elsa, it looked like he was stuck in the same position while her career accelerated. One night, Elsa's parents invited them for dinner. Her father, a successful architect, dominated the conversation with questions about Forrest's career. "So what exactly do you sell, young man?" he pressed. "Dad," Elsa warned. "It's a fair question. I'm interested in my daughter's boyfriend's life," he defended. Forrest smiled politely. "I'm in automotive sales, sir." "Ah, so you work at a car dealership," her father concluded, disappointment evident. "Nothing wrong with that. Honest work." Forrest could have corrected him, could have explained he owned the largest luxury automotive group in 3 states. Instead, he just nodded and asked for the salt. In the car afterward, Elsa was quiet. "Your father didn't approve of me," Forrest stated, not a question. "He's just protective," she said, but her defense lacked conviction. If you've ever sacrificed something precious for someone you love, drop a heart in the comments. And don't forget to subscribe to hear the rest of this story. It's about to take some unexpected turns you won't want to miss. A week passed with minimal communication, just brief, painfully polite text messages confirming Elsa was feeling well and Forrest was fine. The distance that had been growing for months now felt like an unbridgeable chasm. Forrest sat in a quiet corner of Midnight Brew, their favorite coffee shop, nervously turning his mug in circles. This was where they'd had their first date. The symmetry wasn't lost on him, beginning and ending in the same place. When Elsa walked in, his heart contracted painfully. She looked beautiful but tired, dark circles under her eyes partially concealed with makeup. She ordered her usual oat milk latte, 1 sugar, before joining him. Thanks for meeting me, she said, removing her scarf but keeping her coat on. A bad sign. She wasn't planning to stay long. Of course, he replied, trying to read her expression. A small flame of hope still flickered inside him. She took a deep breath, squaring her shoulders in that familiar way she did before making presentations at work. I've thought about this a lot. The flame dimmed. These past months have been intense, she continued. The surgery, my recovery, work changes. It's made me realize what I need in my life and what I want for my future. And I'm not part of that future, Forrest concluded, his voice hollow. Her eyes welled with tears. You saved my life, and I'll always love you for that. Always. She reached across to touch his hand briefly. But I need a partner, not someone I have to take care of. Take care of? Forrest repeated incredulously. When have you ever taken care of me? Emotionally, she clarified. I'm constantly worrying about your feelings, trying not to outshine you, watching what I say about my career so you don't feel inadequate. The unfairness of it stunned him. All this time, he'd been running a business empire, solving complex problems daily, supporting her through a life-threatening illness, and she thought he needed emotional coddling? I need stability, she continued. A future. Kids. A house. I want to build something with someone who's moving forward, not standing still. Forrest's throat tightened. And you think I'm standing still? Aren't you? In the year we've been together, you've never once talked about advancement, ambitions, goals. You seem content just existing. If she only knew the deals he'd closed, the expansion plans he developed, the hundreds of employees who depended on his leadership. The painful irony twisted in his chest. Is there someone else? The question slipped out before he could stop it, voice breaking slightly. Elsa hesitated, confirming his suspicion before she spoke. That's not what this is about. Just tell me. She looked away. Jack asked me to dinner. I said I'd think about it. The pain was physical now, radiating through his chest. Not just any man, but the man whose father now owned Forrest's cherished car. The universe wasn't just cruel, it was vindictive. I gave up everything for you, Forrest said quietly, tears finally breaking free. Elsa's expression hardened, a defense mechanism against her own guilt. And that's not my fault. I didn't ask you to. The words struck like a slap. Technically true, but deeply unfair. She hadn't asked, but he'd given freely, out of love. A concept that suddenly seemed naive. She stood, gathering her purse. I should go. That's it. A year together, and you're just walking away. What else is there to say? Her voice was tight, controlled. We want different things. You don't even know what I want, he replied, the bitter truth of it hanging in the air. She hesitated at that, something flickering in her eyes. Doubt, perhaps. But then she straightened her shoulders again. Goodbye, Forrest. He watched her leave, unable to move, the finality of the moment crushing him. Through the window, he saw her pause on the sidewalk, wiping tears from her cheeks, before walking away with determined steps. The barista approached cautiously. Can I get you anything else? Forrest looked down at his cold coffee, the mug still wrapped in his white-knuckled grip. No, he said finally. I'm done here. The weeks that followed passed in a blur. Forrest threw himself into work with renewed intensity, staying at the office until midnight, starting at dawn. His employees noticed the change but knew better than to comment directly. Boss, the expansion plans for the eastern location. You want to review them today? Tony asked one morning, concern evident in his voice. Yes. And get me the sales projections for next quarter. We need to push harder on the luxury imports. Sure thing. And, you okay? You've been here every weekend this month. Forrest looked up from his computer, the bags under his eyes telling their own story. Just get the new inventory ready. Meanwhile, Elsa's life was transforming rapidly. She began dating Jack, who took her to exclusive restaurants, introduced her to influential connections, and talked confidently about their future. Her social media filled with images of their life together, gallery openings, weekend trips to wine country, business galas. But in quiet moments alone, doubt crept in. She would find herself looking at old photos of her and Forrest, laughing on a hike, cooking together, his eyes filled with a warmth she now realized was rare. Once, she found his old sweatshirt in her closet and sat holding it for an hour, remembering how he'd stayed by her hospital bed for days, refusing to leave even when nurses insisted. Jack was attentive and ambitious, everything she thought she wanted. But he'd never looked at her the way Forrest had, like she was a miracle simply by existing. One evening, Elsa was in Jack's Porsche, heading to yet another networking event, when they stopped at a red light beneath an enormous billboard. Her casual glance upward became a frozen stare of disbelief. Deckard Luxury Auto Group, 30 years of excellence. And there, in a perfectly tailored suit, was Forrest, confident, professional, unmistakable. "Stop the car," she whispered. "What's wrong?" Jack asked, alarmed by her sudden pallor. "That billboard. That's Forrest." Jack looked up, confusion turning to recognition. "Forrest Deckard? Of Deckard Auto Group? Wait, your ex is that Deckard." I don't understand," she stammered, fumbling for her phone with trembling hands. She Googled frantically, "Forrest Deckard Auto." The results loaded instantly. Articles about the youngest CEO in luxury auto retail, profiles in Business Insider and Forbes, photos of him with celebrities and politicians at charity galas. Deckard Group donates $2 million to Children's Hospital. Luxury auto magnate expands to European markets. The pieces clicked into horrible place. The mysterious phone calls. The vague references to sales. His knowledge of classic cars. How he'd produced $85,000 for her surgery seemingly overnight. "He owns the dealerships," she whispered. "All of them." "You didn't know?" Jack asked incredulously. "His family's company is worth over $500 million. They've got dealerships in 3 states. The world tilted beneath her. All those months she'd worried about his lack of ambition, his career stagnation, while he was running an empire. All those times she'd felt embarrassed by his ordinary job, his modest rental car, his reluctance to discuss finances. "I have to go home," she said, her voice distant even to her own ears. "Please, I don't feel well." Jack, confused but concerned, turned the car around. Alone in her apartment, Elsa fell into a spiral of research. Every new discovery was another blow. Forrest wasn't just successful, he was brilliant, respected throughout the industry, known for innovative management and ethical business practices. Photos showed him at the ribbon cutting of a new location, addressing shareholders, accepting a community leadership award. And then she found it, an article about a rare 1967 Corvette Stingray, Nassau Blue, sold at private auction 8 months ago for $850,000. The timing aligned perfectly with her surgery. Not his only asset as she'd assumed. His most precious possession. His connection to his father. The truth crashed down on her with devastating clarity. "I sold everything I had for you had never been about money. It was about what that car represented. His history, his heart." She collapsed onto her sofa, physically ill with the weight of her mistake. "I told him he had nothing," she whispered to her empty apartment. "He gave me everything." Friends, if you're feeling the emotions right now, you're not alone. Sometimes we don't see what's right in front of us until it's gone. If this story is touching your heart, please hit that subscribe button so we can continue this journey together. I'd love to know, have you ever misjudged someone in your life? Let me know in the comments below. The next morning, Elsa called in sick to work for the first time since her surgery. Her phone showed a dozen missed calls from Jack, but she couldn't bring herself to respond. Instead, she dialed Forrest's number with shaking hands. "The number you have dialed has been blocked from receiving your calls," an automated voice informed her. Of course. Why would he want to talk to her after what she'd said? She tried emailing him, but received an automatic reply. "This email address is no longer active. Please contact Deckard Auto Group's main office for assistance." Desperate, she drove to his apartment building only to learn from the doorman that Mr. Deckard had moved out weeks ago. No forwarding address available. "Maybe it's for the best," Vanessa suggested when Elsa called her, sobbing. "He lied to you for a year, Elsa." "No," Elsa corrected, suddenly defensive of him. "He just didn't tell me everything. There's a difference. He let you believe he was struggling financially while running a massive company. Because I judged him." Elsa realized, the truth of it hitting her afresh. "I made him feel like his worth was tied to his success. God, Vanessa, the things I said to him." For 3 days, Elsa tried every avenue to reach Forrest. His social media accounts were either private or dormant. Mutual friends hadn't heard from him. She even called the main number for Deckard Auto Group, only to be politely informed that Mr. Deckard wasn't available and would she like to leave a message? She left dozens, none returned. Finally, desperate and out of options, she drove to the main Deckard dealership. The sprawling complex was impressive, gleaming glass and steel, rows of luxury vehicles catching the afternoon sun. The sign above the entrance read Deckard Luxury Automobiles in elegant script. Inside, the showroom was a temple to automotive excellence. Bentleys, Maseratis, and Aston Martins sat on rotating platforms under perfect lighting. Well-dressed sales associates moved among equally well-dressed customers. Elsa approached the reception desk, heart hammering. "I need to see Forrest Deckard." The receptionist smiled professionally. "Do you have an appointment?" "No, but it's urgent. Personal matter." "I'm afraid Mr. Deckard is in meetings all day. Would you like to make an appointment for next week?" "Please." Elsa's voice cracked. "Just tell him Elsa is here." The receptionist's expression softened slightly at her obvious distress. One moment. She disappeared down a hallway, returning minutes later. "I'm sorry, Ms. Dent. Mr. Deckard is unavailable." "I'll wait," Elsa declared, sinking onto one of the leather couches in the waiting area. Hours passed. The showroom emptied of customers. Sales associates departed. Even the receptionist gathered her things, casting a sympathetic glance at Elsa before leaving. As twilight fell, Elsa remained, determined. Through the glass walls, she watched employees exit the administrative building next door, heading to their cars. Then she saw him. Forrest emerged from the building surrounded by 3 associates, reviewing something on a tablet. He looked different, sharper, more commanding, his casual clothes replaced by a tailored suit that accentuated his athletic frame. But his expression was wrong. The warmth, the easy smile she loved, gone, replaced by something harder. Without thinking, Elsa pushed through the doors and ran across the parking lot. "Forrest." He looked up, freezing when he saw her. Something flashed across his face, pain, longing, anger, before settling into careful neutrality. His associates moved protectively closer. "Sir, should we call?" "It's fine," Forrest interrupted. "Give us a minute." They retreated, casting suspicious glances at Elsa. For a long moment, Forrest and Elsa stood facing each other, 3 feet and a universe apart. "Why didn't you tell me?" she finally asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "Would it have mattered?" His tone was flat, controlled. "Of course it would have. That's exactly why I didn't tell you." The words landed like physical blows. Elsa flinched, but forced herself to hold his gaze. "I deserve to know who you really were," she insisted. A bitter smile twisted his lips. "Did you? The real me was the person who held your hand through chemo, who read to you when the pain was too much, who loved you when you couldn't even recognize yourself in the mirror." His voice strengthened with each word. "My bank account wasn't the real me. This," he gestured to the dealership, the suit, the trappings of wealth, "isn't the real me." "Then why hide it?" Forrest ran a hand through his hair, a familiar gesture that made her heart ache. "My last relationship ended because she fell in love with my money, not me," he explained, his voice softening slightly. "My father always said, 'Find someone who loves you for you.' So when I met you, I wanted to be sure. So I was a test." Elsa asked, hurt coloring her voice. "No," he corrected firmly. "Never a test. Just hope. Hope that someone could love me without knowing what I could give them." He paused, looking past her at the darkening sky. "The surgery wasn't about money. It was about you living. I would have sold everything I owned to make that happen. But you let me believe that I was struggling," he finished for her. "I never said that. You assumed it because I didn't flaunt my wealth. And then you left because of that assumption." Tears spilled down Elsa's cheeks. "I was wrong. So wrong. But you have to understand." She took a deep breath. "All my life, I've had to fight for security. My parents struggled. We moved constantly. Sometimes the power got shut off. When I built my career, I promised myself I'd never feel that fear again. So you equated my supposed lack of ambition with insecurity, Forrest concluded. With risk. Yes, she admitted. I was scared. The pressure from friends, family, colleagues. I let it cloud my judgment. I let it make me forget what really mattered. Which was? That you loved me. That you were kind, supportive, present. That you made me laugh and held me when I cried and never, not once, made me feel anything but cherished. Her voice broke. I'm so sorry I failed your test. Forrest's expression softened fractionally. It was never a test, he repeated. It was hope. They stood in silence, the weight of everything said and unsaid hanging between them. I can't forgive you right now, Forrest finally said, his voice low. Maybe not ever. Elsa nodded, accepting this. I don't expect you to. I just wanted you to know. You were right about me. No, he countered, surprising her. I wasn't right. You weren't wrong. We were just human, both afraid in different ways. She wiped away tears with the back of her hand. I still love you. I think I always will. I can't be with someone who values status over character, he said gently. And you can't be with someone who hid part of himself from you, even with good intentions. So where does that leave us? Forrest looked at her for a long moment, his expression softening further. I don't know. Not together, not now. Maybe not ever. Maybe, in another life, she offered, echoing words from a movie they'd once loved. A ghost of a smile touched his lips. Or maybe in this one. When we are both better. He turned to leave, then paused. Take care of yourself, Elsa. You too, Forrest. She watched him walk away, silhouette outlined against the lights of the dealership he'd built. Not the end she'd hoped for, but perhaps not truly an end at all. As she turned to leave, a voice called out, Excuse me, A dealership employee jogged toward her, holding an envelope. These are for you. Elsa took the envelope, confusion replacing her tears. Inside were hospital bills, her hospital bills, all stamped paid in full. I already told him I'll pay him back, she began. He paid the rest of your medical bills last week, the employee explained. When he heard they were still sending you invoices. He said something about keeping his promises, even when others don't. Fresh tears filled Elsa's eyes. Even now, after everything, he was still taking care of her. Thank you, she whispered, clutching the papers to her chest. Driving home in the gathering darkness, Elsa felt a strange mixture of loss and peace. They weren't getting back together, not today, maybe not ever. But something had been resolved between them. Truth had replaced assumptions. Understanding had replaced judgment. And somewhere in the honesty they'd finally shared, a tiny seed of possibility had been planted. 6 months later, Elsa sat in a coffee shop reviewing marketing materials when someone set a cup beside her. Oat milk latte, 1 sugar. She looked up into Forrest's eyes, warmer now, the hardness gone. Mind if I join you? He asked. She smiled, closing her laptop. I've been saving your seat. Sometimes the person who walks away simply makes space for the life we both deserved all along. Thank you for staying with me through this entire story, beautiful souls. If you felt something, anything, while listening, please hit that subscribe button. Your support means everything, and I promise to keep bringing you stories that touch the heart. Until next time, remember, second chances aren't always romantic, but they're always possible.